Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets, interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. I don't have COVID, but I do have a wicked cold. I think it's the flu. I was trying to get this interview up earlier this week, and I had no voice. So I'm not going to make you listen to this voice for too long. I'm going to jump right into the second part of the interview with director Craig Zisk. But I just want to say I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. And thank you so much for listening in these last 4 seasons. Looking forward to 2022 and season 5 of Decorating Pages. So yeah, in this interview, the second part, Craig and I talk about, as a director, how he's going to shoot a scene when he reads a script. And he gives a great example of a one-er shot that he came up with for the show Smash. We also talk about directors being kind of visitors on some shows where you come in for one episode and how that plays off of all the other creative positions on the show. The importance of a tone meeting, which I've been doing this for how long, and I kind of know what a tone meeting was, but he really let me know what was going on in there. We discussed the show Cop Rocks, which, if you are lucky enough to have caught Cop Rocks in the early 90s, it was like a musical, but like cop show where they would just sing things, and it was so weird, but so innovative and interesting. And he gives a great tidbit that I never knew, that the actors actually sang, like it wasn't pre-recorded. So we talk all about that. That was fascinating. We talk about Larry Sanders, Brave New World, The Looming Tower. He's been directing for 30 years and is still excited about every single project, and a hell of a nice guy. And I really hope I get to work with him again. So I hope you enjoy. So, I mean, you did like American Dreams, Smash, and Wu-Tang. I don't know, I wouldn't put Cop Rock in there, but when you
Cop Rock was the original.
I know. Well, yeah, but it wasn't like performances like Smash or American Dreams, right. Or I'm assuming Wu-Tang gets into them performing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
That to me is hard. Like, I forget. I talked to the production designer on Smash, and now I don't remember the name.
Yeah, was it Kalina?
Or maybe I talked to the decorator. I forget. But I know I talked to someone about Smash because I was like, I watched every episode. I loved it. I can't believe you did that. No, I don't remember because I'm an asshole. But I would think it's hard to try to direct that because you got to direct like a music video in the middle of your show. I mean, and with like an American Dreams, when you're doing like a bandstand and you're some of them trying to replicate actual footage, that's got to be hard.
It is hard. That's where I know to rely on let's just use Smash as an example. We've got, the best songwriters in the world.
Right.
Mark Shaman is writing the music with his partner. I've got this incredible choreographer. David Mullen is the director of photography who I'd worked with on a series I produced. He's incredible. So that's when, yes, I have to have a vision to kind of launch everybody. But when you work with really quality individuals, they want to step up as much as you want them to step up. Right. And they find the joy in your joy. So I remember there was a scene that in one of the episodes of Smash that I directed where they're all sitting around, I think it's Deborah Messing's apartment, and and she and her partner like sitting there
on the piano.
Yeah, the piano, exactly. They sit around the piano and people start singing, and it turns out to be a Leslie Odom Jr. song.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, it's very Smash appropriate. Oh, remember that song we wrote that never made it? They start playing, and I really wanted to do it as a oneer. I wanted to shoot the whole thing in this apartment as a oneer. And so I told Josh, the choreographer, and this is what I'm thinking. And I talked to David Mullen and said, I know how you light so beautifully, but it's very specific. And is that something you're comfortable with if we have to kind of do a general light on the whole place? He got excited by it. The person who got the most excited by it was our Steadicam operator, Jeff Molbach, who's one of the best I've ever worked with. And we worked it out. And Josh, the choreographer, worked with Leslie and said, okay, and I told him this is what we're going to do. And it was such a joy. And everybody was like, oh, here's the day. This is the day we're doing this. And Leslie had been rehearsing forever. And it went through the whole apartment, and people are like, throw him a cane and a hat, and he dances and he jumps off the furniture. And it was so much fun to do. And I just kind of started with, I want to do it as a oneer because it seems like the song was open to that, and I can see the whole apartment, and it won't be everybody just standing around the piano. And the creator got excited by it, and everybody just got excited. And then, Josh would send me videos and like, here's what we've worked on so far. What do you think? And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. But can he go in this door instead of this door? Can he stay here longer? And then I'd show the video to Jeff and say, what do you think? And he goes, oh, this is great. And I can come around the back of him here. And so, yes, sometimes I'd be like, well, what if you came over here? But for the most part, Jeff designed what he was going to do based on what Leslie was doing, which was from what Josh had come up with. And so and then David's like, yeah, I can light from here, and, he can come in through here, and that'd be great. And so it's really a collaboration. And
but so what made you think it was a oneer? Like, as a director, you just saw, when you read that, you thought, I can see this, and I see it.
Yeah, exactly. I could see it. When I read, normally I read a script, I read it once, and I just read it. I read it as an audience member. I read it to kind of just see what it is. It's kind of like, kind of the beginnings of a painting, where you're just kind of doing broad brushstrokes over a canvas just to figure out what it's going to be, or maybe it's even just the sketch of whatever you're going to paint, and then you're going to paint over it. And then, but when I read it, I can see it. And I know when I read something and I can't see it, a lot of times it's in the writing, not to say that there aren't things I don't see, but it's like, I can't, like, directing is very mathematical to me. It's angles, I can see the numbers. I just picture it all like I'm looking at a formula.
Right.
And with that one, when I read it, I can't remember what was in the script, but I think it was kind of one of those, they're all sitting around the piano singing. And it's long. It's a 3-minute song, 3.5-minute song. And I just felt like, wouldn't it be really fun? Or maybe it said he walks into the living room where there are people sitting on a couch. Whatever it was, it just felt like I could do this in 12, 14 pieces of coverage, and it's going to be a lot of static shots and maybe one dolly shot to bring them in, or I can try and incorporate something. In the episode, it did get broken up. I did tell them I will shoot some reaction shots because they wanted some reaction shots.
I was going to ask that. Did the editor go along with it?
Yeah, the editor liked it. In my cut, it was a oneer. And then, I don't know if the editor told me or the showrunner or somebody said, we did use some of those close-ups you shot because there are 4 or 5 different cast members in the scene. Even though it's
that's
just
a lot
singing.
For oneer.
I think there are 20, 25 people in the apartment.
Right.
But because there are all these other people in the scene, they wanted to feel their presence, and it was hard to incorporate all of those people at the same time as following Leslie around the room. So I understood why, but they said go for it, but I think when I read it the first time, I was kind of just rough sketching in. I was like, this feels like this could be really fun. And I don't tend to go into things being like, I haven't read the script yet, but I'm going to find a oneer in here. I don't try to
force it.
That way. I try to let the script tell me what the shots are. And in that case, when I read it, the scene just said, this would be really fun if you just followed him around the whole apartment and you lose him for a couple of seconds. And so I think there were a couple other people dancing with him. It felt alive, and I knew that, and the song was great. So I felt like it needed a lot of life to it. That's kind of came to doing that one.
God, I loved that show.
I did too.
It was fun. I don't remember the time. I just remember being like, oh, it's a fun show.
It's a fun show. It's shot in New York. Yeah. We shot in Times Square and right in the middle of Times Square.
It felt rich. It felt like a lot of money's being put into this, and I can see it. Yeah, I see it in the costumes. I can see it in the sets. Like someone really loves this project.
Yeah.
Or NBC really loves this project, I should say.
Bob Greenblatt was running NBC at the time, and he had been at Showtime for many years, where I worked for 7 years on 4 different projects and knew Bob well. And it was a project that he actually had developed at Showtime. And when he left Showtime to become the head of NBC, he had, I think this is how the story goes, had asked Showtime if he could take that show with him.
It would have been better on Showtime. He's a Broadway
producer on top of being this incredible executive and really super person. So it was a real passion project for him. So he really wanted that show, and he wanted it to succeed, and he wanted it to succeed by giving us a decent amount of money to make it. So it's a blast. Yeah, you got kind of whatever you wanted.
Yeah. It was fun, and it was funny, and
yeah, and the actors were great.
Yeah, oh yeah,
so talented. I couldn't believe, they worked so hard because they had to go.
They had to dance and sing and probably record those songs, and then
re-record all the songs. They had to go off, so they'd shoot. Megan Hilty would be in, the 8 days or 9 days of shooting, or 10 days. I don't remember how many days it was. Would be in 3 or 4 days of shooting. You're like, oh, well, she's got 6 days off. Oh, those other 6 days, she was doing her dance routines. She was doing pre-records. She was doing, these gigantic costume fittings because of the stuff they were doing. So it was a full-time job for all of those actors because they didn't have any time off. I mean, if they weren't on set, they were rehearsing something else.
I mean, I kind of almost wish it stayed at Showtime.
I know. It would have been a different show for sure. I
might have lasted a little longer, though, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. But it was one of my favorite experiences. I loved doing this show.
I was just trying to look up who... No, I don't know who I was trying to look up who I interviewed who did the... Kalina Ivanov.
Yeah, Kalina.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who did that HBO show that I just watched and loved too. God, I just interviewed her a couple months ago now.
Oh really? Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I worked with her on a couple of different series, and she's one of the best.
She's a whip. When she was talking to me, she was a whip. I loved it. I was like, can I just work? Can I just hang out with you?
Yeah. Yeah, she's awesome. And that's what's fun about the job is you get to create all these new worlds all the time, and you just work with such talented craftspeople who care as much about their job as you do, and we're all there to serve the purpose of making a great show. And there aren't a lot of professions where you really just love what you do. I mean, there are days when it's not great, and there are days when it's hard, and there are days that I wish I were doing something else. But for the most part, I mean, I've been directing for 30 years, and I'm still as excited as I was the first time I did Brooklyn Bridge and walked in and tried to figure out where to put a camera. And there's, I created a triangle with the actors, and how do I shoot this? And, it's thrilling, and I still feel that way. I mean, we just worked together on a show, and it's still trying to figure it out, and it's still the excitement of how do we make something funny, or how do we make this funny thing funny, or what do we do? And we have a great party scene that we got to do, and talk about balloons, and we get to talk about food and
balloons,
music, and it's fun. It's really fun.
It is, and I had one thing I was going to say this. Yeah. When someone like you comes in to direct, and the confidence and because I have worked with you before, luckily, it's different than you can see sometimes. Like a visiting director comes in and they're really nervous, or they're really kind of like they thought they knew. I hate it. I've seen it a lot lately in the shows that I've done, that the director will say like, oh, we're setting up a scene like this, and like either the showrunner or someone else comes in and they're like, that's not what we're going for here, and you're like, shouldn't you guys have talked before we got here in front of all of us? Like, not that it's super embarrassing or whatever, but it's like, that's probably the worst thing you could say to that guy who just set up this whole shot, and now you're coming over like, that's not what we mean by this at all. Like, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah, you do hope it's talked about beforehand. That's why I do love prep for this reason. I mean, I know a lot of directors don't like to prep because they feel like it's boring. And the text out is not the most exciting thing in the world. But we have such limited time on set that I just want to spend my prep getting every question answered that can possibly be answered. It's impossible. You can't. You never know what's going to come up. It's one of the joys and tragedies of this job is that bad stuff happens and you have to deal with it. But if I can eliminate all the known problems or questions before we get there and talk about how I'm going to block a scene and make sure the showrunner likes what we're doing, because I don't want to spend 10 minutes or a half hour reblocking or discussing something. And there's always things to discuss on set because you're rehearsing it for the first time for real, even though you've done table read, the actors are actually performing.
Yeah, it's completely different.
That comes up, but you need the time for that to happen. And if you're still talking about, the drape colors, or God, I wish we had.
Oh, I hope not.
Somebody to scramble and go get. And look, I've done this to you. I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we had this?
No,
somewhere, but right, and that's what sometimes happens.
It would have been great if you asked me 5 days ago.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you don't need me to come up with it now, but but like just stuff happens that you don't think of, nobody thinks of, and. Like we had this balloon thing that we did. I keep bringing up the balloons. We had this balloon arch, and it's supposed to sag, and we talked about it in prep, and we got there, and it was like, oh yeah, that's supposed to sag, and how do we make it look like it's sagging without looking like it's too saggy and not too sad? And we're talking about the happiness
sad
of
balloons
and you came up with, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this, this, and this, and I was like, oh, great, there it's done. But it's just something we hadn't thought of before we stepped on the set and looked at it. And you solved it.
There's so much. I mean, there's wardrobe to consider. Like a big scene like that, you had a dance move, you had balloons, you had like a room full of extras. Like it was a big party scene. It's a lot, and you don't. I mean, even in meetings, I've been in various meetings of scripts, and someone will ask a question, and the writer is like, "Oh yeah, I don't know how he got there," or like, "Oh yeah, is it the same day?" And you're like, bro, you wrote this. Like, you not know it's the same day.
This is the scene right before the what we're talking about, and this happens. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it's.
But you guys do, which I'm not a part of, and I kind of always thought that the designer should be a part of, is the tone meeting, which is usually the director and the writer and showrunner. And you guys go over the episode, and I don't know what goes on in there.
So a tone meeting it's the time it's normally the showrunner and or writer of the episode, the director, the first AD, the editor. And on some shows don't use the editor or don't have the first AD, but I like all of them to be there. What you're doing is you're doing a page by page examination of the script where it's my opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to shoot that scene as a oneer. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
So I now know I'm getting the approval so they don't show up on the set and go, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I've been practicing this oneer for 5 days.
Right.
Shoot 14 pieces of coverage. So that's part of the meeting. But the other part of the meeting is the writer explaining the small nuances of the scene to the director so that, the director, in this case me, I know sometimes the history that I may not know, that
or the arc that's about to happen. Yeah.
Right.
I see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or here's the meaning of this scene. So yes, this is a scene about this on its surface, but really what's happening is this. A lot of the times it's obvious, but a lot of the times it's not, or you're hearing something like you said that, oh, just so you know, these two characters get together in 3 episodes. They don't know it yet, but
right. So that's going to affect your directing, or shouldn't it? Like, maybe you shouldn't know that, so that the character, I don't know. I think that's a weird.
No, it's valid, because there was a thing in a show that they were like, oh, just so you know, she's pregnant, but she doesn't know it yet. So I'm like,
I hate when that happens.
I'm like, exactly. I said, well, does the actor know that her character is going to be pregnant later in the season? Or am I going to, I'm not going to bring it up anyway, because she's not supposed to know. But if she brings it up,
right,
because it's not clear in the script, and it's only clear because you're telling me this, that she doesn't know yet, because in the next episode, I happen to know that she is pregnant, knows she's pregnant. So, that may affect the way the actor plays the scene.
Right.
With the person that she's her partner, is she hiding it from him that she's pregnant? Does she not know? Does she know and wants to tell him? I mean, all those things, if they're not on the page, which often they're not, I might have just shot it like a regular scene. In this case, she didn't know she was pregnant, so there was nothing to play there. But if it had been something like, oh yeah, she knows she's pregnant, and actually in the meeting, the writer and the showrunner were discussing it. They were like, should she know, or should she? Do you think she knows now? Well, it's better if she doesn't know. I don't. Yeah.
And then you're like, this is not your meeting. This is my meeting.
But it's good that they at least thought about it instead of on that, by the actor saying, "Oh, do I know I'm pregnant?" And then I have to go back to the monitor and say, "Right, the writer, she's pregnant." And then they sit around and talk about it for 10 minutes, and I'm like, "I've got to shoot something, so let's do a take where she knows and a take where she doesn't." And so it just, the tone meeting kind of clears up a lot of those notes, and it's nice to have the first AD with you, because she or he could can kind of take the notes. And often I'll say to the AD, and remember in the tone meeting, and because I take notes throughout my whole script is just the tone meeting notes, and I'm like, I forgot. I remember them saying something. I didn't write it down, and the AD will say, "Oh yeah, they're doing this. They're supposed to be doing this, or whatever it is." And then it's good for the editor. So when the editor's editing, they know what the tone of the scene is supposed to be. They're useful in comedies, but they're normally more useful in a drama where the stakes are higher in terms of the dramatic storytelling,
right?
Because there's not a lot of toning of a joke in a show. So we did do them on Rutherford Falls, and they were really helpful, and especially since I was doing some early episodes in the season, to know what was coming up and what the actors knew and didn't know, and what the characters knew and didn't know. So they're always helpful. Some of them go on very long.
I thought it was like a secret society little meeting that you guys.
No, I worked on a show with a showrunner I've worked with many times, and this person is famous for long tone meetings. The first
Dave Mendel, no.
No, it was not Dave. I don't know if it was the first show I worked on, but one of the shows I worked on with this person, the tone meeting was 8 hours long.
What? Did they write the whole episode while you were in there?
For 1 hour of TV. I've not experienced it, but other people I've talked to, other directors have told me that they've been in very long ones where the showrunner acts out all the parts. It's like really like doing every part, and I have not experienced that. And
I really hope the answer to that question is Mike Schur.
Yeah, that would be awesome. He's still talking about Parks and Rec.
Right. He's just reenacting episodes of Parks and Rec in another show's tone meeting.
Yeah. No, but it was long, and I ate a couple of meals in there. It might have been 6 hours. I don't know if it was 8 hours. It was very long. It was on a Saturday. I was on location.
It was on a Saturday.
I was in wherever I was on location doing nothing anyway. But I just remember we were sitting around. It was all the people that were in. We were in Puerto Rico, and so it was myself and the producers that were there, and I think the AD and they were so used to doing these that the camera was on me, kind of like a Zoom call, and they were all off camera, and they were all like doing the crossword puzzle, and they'd sat through so many of these because the first few hours was just talking about the actors and their characters and what the journeys are, and it's like, you should just tape this and give it to the directors so they can watch it in their hotel. Get this part
fall asleep to every night. There's your prep.
I will say that it was helpful, and there were times when you were like, so much is stated that's the obvious, but then you get the stuff that's not the obvious stuff, and then you're like, thank God I had this meeting because I would never have known that, and it's made it so much better. So, and he's a very funny person as well. So it was.
Well, at least it was entertaining.
Yeah, it was entertaining for sure. But they're really helpful.
I'm gonna jump around a little bit and just like ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
Do you think Cop Rock could be made today? And like be just balls out Cop Rock? Like, I think it would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was awesome at the time. It was not well received, as we know. I think somebody could try it again. It would probably have a different approach. The music, of the time.
I mean, look at Hamilton. I feel like it could.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely think it could be done today. I think certain songs were very successful on that show, and certain songs fell flat. I think the more comedic songs weren't as successful because the non-musical portion of the show was so dramatic. I mean, the show is NYPD Blue,
right?
Set in Los Angeles, except the cops sing.
They sing.
So it came before NYPD Blue. So that's where NYPD Blue grew from, this really gritty cop story.
And was it Dana Bochco in that? No, am I getting this wrong?
Well, Barbara Boston,
Barbara Boston, that's who it was. Sorry.
Married to at the time, played the mayor of
Los
Angeles.
That's what it was.
Yeah, it was before he had married Dana years later. But yeah, Barbara Boston, and this incredible, again, much like Smash,
incredible cast,
actors who can sing and dance, and they did on that show something that was very important to Steven and Greg Hoblet, who was the producer director on that show. Was that all the vocals were sung live. So there was one pre-recorded song of we did.
How did you do that with sound and like?
It's crazy. So if you watch the show, which is impossible to find, but you can get clips online.
But I did.
You can hear them, you can hear them like hitting their chest. You hear them hitting the microphone, and the opening scene of the first episode is the cops bust down a door of a crack house, and there's like people scrambling around. They arrest the main guy, and as they're dragging him out, he starts rapping. It was brilliant. I loved the opening of that whole thing. Was spectacular, and you can hear him as he's being moved around. You can hear his clothing hitting his mic, and the other cops who are singing behind him, and you hear. We shot it at night in LA and probably Inglewood or something, and you hear all these sounds. And we had the record plant, which is a recording studio here in LA, has a mobile truck that's an 18-wheeler that when Fleetwood Mac would play at the Forum, they'd bring this truck and they would mix the show out of
Oh,
this
I see.
truck. You do something out of this truck. So it's like a mobile recording studio. And so we would bring that truck with us wherever we were on location, and the actors were live mic'd. And
But wait,
we had one big dance number in one episode that we couldn't do live vocals just because the dancing was so intense that the actors would have been out of breath. So we did pre-record one, but the rest were all done live, and it was great. That was a show where I learned a lot. That was my first producing.
But wasn't that so hard? I mean, you'd have to reset if, like, you didn't, like, as an actor and I'm singing, I feel like, oh, I didn't hit that note, or I said this, I don't know, I would be like,
Yeah, but we did multiple takes, and we edited between the takes, and we also did some.
I mean, that brings that show to a whole nother level. I feel like people should know that.
I know, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, but a lot of movie magic behind the scenes where we would take this word from this take and put it in, and much like you would do ADR.
Right.
But all the vocals were live. It was crazy. It was such a learning experience. I didn't know that much about music, live recording of music. I had been an associate producer, or I'd been in an editing room prior to that. That was my first associate producer credit, but I'd been in an editing room quite a bit prior to that. And so I knew about mixing, and I knew about, taking a song and just putting it into a movie or a score, but I hadn't experienced anything like that. And it definitely, I still use a lot of those tricks today.
Well, if you bring back Cop Rock, I want on it, because I feel like Cop Rock meets Smash.
Yeah. It'd be perfect. With a little American Dream.
But but now it'd have to be like meet CSI or like Autopsy Guy or something.
Yeah. There's the whole autopsy scene. Why not? That sounds good.
You worked on the Gary Shandling show, which had to be amazing, right?
I did Larry Sanders.
Larry Sanders, sorry.
Yeah. That was the last time I produced a show actually the only time I've ever produced a show where I didn't direct. I had been directing a little while at that point, not very long, but mostly sitcoms. And I was meeting at Burlstein Gray, who was the production company of Larry Sanders, but also News Radio and Just Shoot Me. And at the time, they were the big deal of sitcoms. So I was meeting with them to kind of talk about signing some kind of overall deal with them to direct like 2 episodes of all their shows or 3 episodes of all their shows, except for Larry Sanders, because it was its own thing. And the couple people I was meeting with said, well, would you consider producing any of our shows? Because I had just come off being a producer director on a show. And I said, well, I'm really trying to focus on just being a director. I've been a producer director, but I've never just been a freelance director, and I want to be thought of as a director, not as a producer. But look, obviously Larry Sanders, who would say no to that, but you have a producer and it's going into its last year, but that would be very hard to say no to something like that. And they said, well, the producer is moving on to another show. We have that available. If you want to meet with Gary,
sure.
You won't be able to direct. They were very upfront that Gary did not want somebody who was looking to direct on the show. And so, I said, wow, that'd be amazing. I'd love to. And I went home and was talking to my wife and, my agents and whoever else I could talk to. And like, why wouldn't I want to do this? Tell me why I shouldn't do this. It's the greatest show on television.
Yeah.
Going into its last year. And So I was like, of course I want to do this. So I met Gary and we hit it off and decided to hire me to do the show. And he actually ended up directing 2 or maybe 3, I think 2 or 3 of the episodes. I think 2 episodes. He had never directed before. So I was able to kind of help him do that. And obviously he's acting in a lot of scenes. So I was on set and I was at the monitor and we'd play back for him to look at things and, or he'd like check in and like, was that okay? And what do you think? And So that was fun. It was nice to kind of be able to be there for him on that, and so I kind of vicariously got to direct through him, but it was great. And then actually Judd Apatow directed. He was a writer on the show for many years and was a consultant that final season. He wasn't on the staff anymore. He was off doing some other things, but he did come back and direct an episode, and that was the first thing he ever directed.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, it's cool.
The wife, as like they say, like I don't know. I forget who said that, but like unfortunately, after he died, it's like Judd Apatow's like the grieving wife of
he's the grieving
going
widow.
through his stuff and making the documentary and
the documentary was brilliant.
Oh my God, I
very
cried.
Honest, which is hard to do when you're so close to somebody and
Yeah.
want to show them a certain way. And Judd was very honest about things, and it was cool. I really, really enjoyed it. It was nice to
beautifully done. And
yeah.
such a tribute, and as a fan, just such a tribute to like to
It
get
was
to
amazing
see all
to be
that.
around. I mean, it was a very difficult show, and it was a difficult year on that show. But just to be around it, and just I've never worked on a show like that was ever produced like that or shot like that, or it was kind of a one of a kind. I don't know that you could. I mean, you could do the show today, but you wouldn't produce it like that. It was just insane. We would rehearse for 3 days and then shoot the whole show in 2 days. So
Was it scripted? That's what I wanted to ask. Was it
yes,
scripted or was it just
It was scripted, but there was more
like
leeway.
an outline, or was it?
No, script,
It
like
was
real
scripted.
script.
Yeah.
For sure. There was more leeway than, say, what we're used to on like Parks and Rec, where we call the last take on Parks and Rec was always called a fun run, where you let the actors
Candy bag.
do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
The camera's going to find them. They're going to figure it out. Obviously, the closer it relates to the story of the episode, more likely it'll get into the show. But there were some pretty wild ones, as we all know, and I think Larry Sanders, we were a little more flexible with how things went, although we did shoot the script. But Gary was there so much, and Gary oversaw or wrote, almost every episode. And so he would often stop and be, this doesn't feel right. This isn't working, or after a rehearsal, and be like, it wasn't quite our experience on Veep where things were getting rewritten, but that was the style of that show. And that's how they did the show. They built that into the show.
They thrived. Veep thrived on rewriting an entire scene just as we were about to shoot it. And it worked, and it's brilliant.
It was always better.
Yeah.
There's not one joke I missed, one story I missed. It was always better.
I do wish everyone got to see what we shot.
I know.
We shot like an hour-long show.
No, crazy.
So I feel like the fans really got screwed on that one, because at least we got to read and be a part of all of that other funniness, which I've never been on a show that cut that much.
Yeah, that was a lot of material.
It was a lot.
For sure. But Larry Sanders was mostly scripted.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love Gary Shandling, and I feel like there's that little like genius there, and I never worked on anything with him. I would assume that there's such a inner like, oh, is this right? I don't was he funny, like, just to be around?
Yeah.
Was he just so, it seems like he was just so uptight about it and wanting it to be perfection that he couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I think by that point he was not enjoying it probably as much as he was when he first started, but he would drive himself crazy to make sure it was right. And again, another lesson learned in like having that kind of passion, and when is there too much passion and when is there not enough. And he cared, and that's what was important, and it showed, because you just wanted everything to be right. So I think that was what made the show so good, was he cared, and he put everything into it.
Everything out there. You have 96 directing credits on IMDb. Do you know that?
Couple.
You have a couple. What do you think your hardest one was?
Hardest show, I think Brave New World was probably the most difficult, but also one of the most enjoyable, just because of creating new worlds. And it was a lot of visual effects. Almost every set had a green screen out of every window, had a green screen out of it. Every time you shot outside, there was something that was going to be replaced, or a ship flying in. And so the challenge, and I did some early episodes on that as well. I directed episodes 3 and 4, and they didn't do a pilot, so it was right into the series. And everybody was still trying to figure it out. And what is it? They're doing this, and they're like wiping their hand because they were seeing something through a contact lens they wear, and they're wiping their hands. And the showrunner and I, who became very good friends on that, we were like, are they swiping too fast? Is it too slow? Is it too big a motion? Should it just be a finger instead of a whole hand? And so,
these are the conversations going on in Hollywood. Are we swiping too fast?
And so we were like, I don't know. Let's have her try doing it where she swipes. She's reading a newspaper, and we don't know what the newspaper's going to look like. And we're saying she should look towards the ceiling. She's looking right in front of her, but then we're having to look through it, make sure she's looking up, laying down. And so it was just every day was creating a world from scratch, and that was so exciting, but really hard. And we shot in Wales.
Wow.
And which was great. I loved it there.
Welsh.
Beautiful. Nice. Yeah. I loved it there.
It's on the bucket list. I gotta get there.
Yeah, you gotta go. It's so beautiful, and the people are so nice. But when you shoot, I've shot a few things in Europe, and every production I've ever worked, they shoot 10-hour days. So it's 10 hours from the time you get there until you leave. So if you start at 8 in the morning, at 6 p.m., you wrap. You don't wrap at 6:01. You don't wrap at 6:05. To get any extra time, you have to ask very early in the day. Like, I know I need these 15 minutes at the end of the day. You don't get an hour. You might get 10 minutes or 20 minutes max. And everybody kind of has to agree to it. It's a big, big deal. So they want you to shoot from your 10 hours, which includes what's called a rolling lunch, which means you have a rolling lunch. So you don't break for lunch.
Right, French lunch or whatever they call it.
Which is great. Yeah, you're shooting French hours, basically. Yeah. And I prefer it because you don't break for lunch, which even though it's 42 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is, it never is. And people are slow coming back. And you have to wait for hair and makeup to get the actors made up again. And it's kind of a momentum killer. I run on adrenaline. And so I've got all this adrenaline for 6 hours. And then, okay, now I have to sit around for an hour. And then I have to get all that adrenaline back to get through the last 6 hours. So that was just another challenge of that show was I had X number of days. We did get extra days because we were only shooting 10 hours. But, you're getting towards the end of a day here.
Pressure's on.
You're like, I really want to make my day today, but, I may need an extra half hour. And I call the producer and say, hey, we're a little behind. I need this extra half hour. And most of the time gets approved and the crew's used to it. And nobody really complains that much about that. But when you've got 2 hours of work and an hour left, you got to start spinning. How am I going to shoot this in an hour? And that's what I have to do. And so it's just kind of this real adrenaline, just racing through you at all times, which is super challenging, but really
it's got to be exhausting. But keeping up like that is exhausting.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It breaks you down.
Yeah, it does. But I would.
But in a good way, it also makes you more creative in a sense. Like, I got to get this done. How creatively can I do it?
Yeah, exactly.
So it works both
all
ways.
The plans I came in with for this day, or the end of this day, I now have to have another plan to get out of this. And I mean, the good news is then you're done at 6 o'clock if you start at 8, and you've got a whole evening.
You got a whole evening to prep for the next day.
Yeah, but you can see your family, or you can.
Or go into a tone meeting, or.
Right, exactly. Roll into a tone meeting from another episode. Yeah. But I would say that was probably the most challenging show I've directed, but really proud of both episodes I did. And I think the show was great, and sadly didn't get picked up for more episodes. But
my husband watched it, so I have an idea of it. I didn't I didn't focus on it, but it was on.
Yeah.
So I know what
It's
you're
got-
talking about, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it, but I know what it
Yeah.
is.
Recommended. I thought it was great.
And it's crazy. And then that was Netflix or
That was Peacock.
Peacock.
Yeah, that was Peacock's first original series.
You think they just let it go?
What happened was that Peacock, it was just COVID actually is what kind of killed it, that Peacock was meant to launch with the 2020 Olympics. So the whole thing about Peacock was, we're going to premiere with all our hit NBC Universal shows, plus the Olympics. And then we have all these original shows,
right?
World being one of them, and the first one. So they were expecting these huge numbers as a launch for Peacock because of the Olympics. And the Olympics were canceled because of COVID, or postponed. And so they had a very soft launch. They didn't have Parks and Rec to begin with, right? Or did they?
I don't think they did. And they didn't have The Office. They didn't have The Office at the beginning because The Office was still on Netflix. So they didn't acquire it back till this past summer.
Yeah, last year, yeah. So it just didn't get that big, as a network, didn't get this giant push to start with. And it was a mostly British cast. I mean, definitely recognizable people. And I think it just didn't get the publicity it needed to get eyes on it. And then it was super expensive and shooting in Wales, and I'm sure, and some new people came into Peacock, and I think they wanted to put their stamp on what the network was going to be. And so it just kind of fell to the wayside, which is sad, because an incredible group of people and so talented.
When I was starting to do Rutherford Falls, I didn't have Peacock. And I was like, well, what's going on over here? And I learned that Peacock is actually, or at the time, I don't know how you get this number, but Disney was the number one downloaded app for programming, and then Peacock was number 2 because everyone who gets Comcast and then whatever market you're in gets it. So that was kind of genius that they and by the way, you get a free year of Peacock. So then everybody got it. And that's why everyone's rewatching The Office and Parks and Rec. And that was kind of a genius move away from that Olympics.
When you own the cable network too, you get both those things.
Are you watching anything right now that you are inspired by?
Good question. I'm not watching a ton of TV right now. I'm just too tired. But,
no, I'm not tired. I feel bad. It's like 9:30.
I know. I mean, I wish I had more time to watch TV. I'm trying to think what I've there's a show on Netflix called Money Heist that I've been watching from the very beginning. And so the last 5 episodes of the whole series came out a couple of weeks ago. So I started that last night when I have
That's like one of their biggest series.
It's great. I think it's so well done and really, creative and doing things in a different way. And
watching Succession?
Sorry. I watched Succession, but it's over. It ended last week.
I know.
Of course.
You know what? I watched
sending me treats every night.
I watched it last night, and I was like, "Wait, this isn't the ending."
Crazy, right?
I was like, "This isn't the ending, right? There's one more. They got to give me one more." And I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, now we have to wait probably 18 months before we get another one. It was so good.
It was so good. It's so fucked up. Yeah. That dick pic scene is hilarious. Hilarious. Because we've all sent texts to the wrong people.
Right, exactly.
But never a dick pic to your dad.
Some of their faces were so brilliant. Yeah. Yes, Succession, definitely watched every episode this year and the last Sunday. So
I feel like I don't watch that much either.
I tend to want to watch.
Weird. But I watch everything.
I don't have to pay attention to unless I'm really in the mood to sit down and watch something like Succession, where I've got an hour where I'm just going to sit and pay attention. So I tend to have a lot of cooking shows on just because they can just be on.
I watch Housewives.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. It's just kind of mindless, and you can check in on it, and But, I definitely sample everything. I always want to know what's happening and what shows are going on.
Yeah.
And, I always catch up on the big stuff like Squid Game and, which I did enjoy.
Squid Game was good.
Yeah. So I don't get too far behind, but it is hard, as you know, with kids and work and.
Well, because you got, in a sense, too, you have to, you still got to, at least us, I feel like we got to keep this water cooler sort of conversation going about projects like a Squid Game or something like, hey, did you see that? Like, wow, look what they did, or how'd they do that, or where was that film?
Never heard of it. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Probably not going to go very far.
Yeah. But
you have to. But I try to, I definitely sample everything, and I try to just, in the ones that I can stick with because it's something attracts me to it. I end up, looking forward to watching it. And then if I'm directing something new, I end up trying to watch as much of it as I can. I mean, especially if it's a show that's only done a couple of seasons, I'll watch every episode. So,
do they send you seasons, or do you have to buy Peacock, or do you have to
I had Peacock. Yeah. I'm sure I had Peacock and said, "Hey, Morgan, I need."
Hey, Morgan, what's your code?
Yeah, can you hook me up?
I asked him at first. I was like, he goes, "Well, they give you 2 free." I go, "Okay, well then, what am I just gonna watch 2?"
What are you doing with your other one? Yeah. Yeah, so normally I have it, but if I didn't, they would send me things. But
nice.
Normally I have it.
And also as a director, if you come in and direct episode 5, they will send you any rough cuts of ones in that season. Usually, sometimes they try.
I get all the scripts for sure.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Depending on where they are in post. They'll send me. They normally don't send me anything before a network cut. They don't send me director's cuts, which I probably wouldn't send somebody a director's cut either. It's not fair to the directors. And but yeah, so I tend to watch all that. I definitely read every script for the season prior to my episode.
And on a sad note, the Looming Tower episode of 9/11 that you did. That had to be rough. That had to be rough.
It was rough. That was a show. That series is the show I'm most proud of. I mean, for many reasons. It just was an incredible story. It was a story that needed to be told. It was very moving. We shot all over the world. We shot in 6 different countries. We shot in New York and South Africa and Morocco and London, and we had a little splinter crew that we hired to work in Pakistan and Montreal. Where else did we shoot? We shot all over. But the 9/11 episode was, very moving, very difficult. We shot in New York City. Everybody on the crew had lived through it in the city, and for the most part. And I had called the studio to say we were shooting a scene in front of what was going to become our World Trade Center. Obviously, it wasn't there anymore, but we found an exterior that worked well enough for us to then visual effect in the building and all the sculptures and make it our version. And it was a very moving day, and so I had called the studio a few days before and said, look, I want to say something before we start shooting, and I also want to know that we've got some support if people are having a hard time, because that afternoon we were doing a scene where one of the characters is walking down a deserted street. He's completely covered in ash and papers are flying, and he'd clearly been in the building searching, and it was really hard. And Bill Camp was the actor, who was phenomenal and such a good sport about it. And so I just said at the beginning of the day, I said, look, we're going to be shooting some scenes today that are going to be harder than some of the stuff we've done. And if anybody wants to talk to somebody, we will provide somebody. If you feel like you can't stay today, we understand. If you're moved, you need to leave, or whatever it is, or if you want to just talk, I'm available. And I spent the whole day hearing everybody's stories about what they did and what happened to them on 9/11, and it was the most beautiful day. I loved it. Yeah, I mean, it was hard, and people were sharing that, I was shooting in the city and my kid was in school in Brooklyn and I couldn't get across the bridge because there were so many. Everybody had their story, or vice versa. Their kid was in the city and they weren't. But everybody on that show knew what we were trying to do and rallied around that, and it definitely showed in that show. I mean, it was, and in particular that episode, it was really, really beautiful. And we shot the show in a certain way as to not glorify any of the violence. We never showed any of the actual events, the 3 or 4 events that happened throughout the series. You never saw the buildings being brought down. We did it all just before and just after, and it was hard to work on, but so rewarding, because just the stories that I heard from people and the story we were telling, which was most important.
I would think directing something like that it's not like if you directed like the C Word. Well, not all of us have had cancer,
right?
But all of us were alive at that time, and everybody has a story, and and you want to share it because we all experienced it. We all want to, and as a director, I would assume that you're taking all that in to either use or not use, or it all has to be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, more just to be useful, to just feel like if somebody wants to share that and they're willing to share with me, just to be a good listener and we were a really tight crew. It was a incredible group of actors on that show it was a very serious show. Even on dramas, you're always kind of joking around off camera, and this just wasn't that kind of show. I mean, people had a good time and everybody enjoyed being there, and it wasn't hard in any way, but you didn't feel like joking around.
Right.
I mean, Jeff Daniels is amazing, and I've worked on a couple of series with him, and he likes to stay on set and he plays the guitar just like off to the side. He goes to the room that's set aside for the actors, and he brings a little guitar and he plays. He's like picking, and he's kind of a, he's just there to do the work and serious, but it just wasn't a show where you wanted to sit around and joke around with people and things. Right. But we had fun, but it was hard. I mean, in shooting in South Africa, we were there for 6 weeks, and then we were in Morocco we shot for.
Were you cross-boarding? Because you did 3 episodes, were you doing?
Yeah, so what we did was, because I produced the series as well, we shot the first 5 in New York, and then all the international pieces for the first 5, we shot in South Africa. So we went to South Africa and shot all the pieces for those 5 episodes, plus a few scenes that we knew were coming up in the second half, mostly in the episodes that I was directing. So I just directed those scenes, and I directed some scenes from other episodes as well, just because of the nature of being in South Africa and having to shoot so much. Then we came back from South Africa to New York, and we shot the New York portions of the final 5 episodes, and then went to Morocco and shot. I think I was there for 10 weeks, and I think we shot maybe 5 or 6 weeks.
How long was the whole thing? I mean, I think it was 10 episodes.
It was 10 episodes, and we shot from, I think maybe April to September.
Wow.
And then we came back. Well, while we were in Morocco, we decided to add a piece to the first episode. The opening of the first episode was not in the original script. And through editing and notes and just kind of thinking about things, we decided to add a piece to the first episode. So while we were in Morocco thinking we were wrapping up the show, I literally remember sitting in the hotel talking to the production designer And we were like, well, the writer and I came up with an idea for what the opening should be. And we were like sitting around in the hotel bar talking about what the opening is going to be. And we kind of wrote it out and we sketched it out and we sent it to the other showrunner who was in New York and said, what do you think of this? And he was like, oh, let's do this, this, and this. And we kind of just figured out what we wanted it. And so it was just kind of a chase. The whole beginning is a chase. And so I called the production
But a
designer.
great beginning to a show to keep the adrenaline of that, like,
yeah, it was
moment.
kind of like, it used to start with somebody walking down a hallway at the CIA with this package, and then they walk into Peter Sarsgaard's office and they go, we got it. And they show this hard drive, and you kind of knew what the hard drive was from what they were talking about, but it was like, well, why don't we see them get the hard drive? That was kind of the note that we all came up with. And so that's what it ends up being. And so I said, call the production designer, Lester Cohen, who's phenomenal.
Amazing. Yeah.
And he also did American Rust that I did. And so I said, Lester, come meet me in the bar at the hotel. And it's like,
I'm already here. No,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
Kind of like that. So I said, well, do you think we can shoot this in Casablanca? Because we thought, well, maybe we'll just keep rolling. It took place in Eastern Europe. So he was like, we might be able to. I don't know. Let's go. So I said, all right, well, I think it was midweek or whatever. I said, all right, Saturday, let's fly to Casablanca for the day, have our location scout, tell them what we want, see if we can do it. We went there about 4 hours into scouting. We're like, we're not seeing anything that feels like Eastern Europe. Let's go have a nice meal. And then let's go back to Agadir where we were staying, and went back and just chatting. It was like, where can we shoot this thing? Where can we shoot this thing? The studio wanted us to shoot it in Eastern Europe. And we're like, we're coming back from having shot for however many months, and we're going back to the States, and I don't really want to get on a plane in 3 weeks again and go to test and scout and figure it out. And Lester said, I shot in Old Montreal. I shot something there a few years ago, and it looks just like Eastern Europe. Let's get a scout and have somebody look there. And it was perfect. So we ended up,
Nice.
Lester and I flew after a couple of weeks back in the States. We flew to Montreal and scouted for 4 or 5 days and found kind of the whole route we were going to do for this chase scene. And then
that worked out.
And then about 3 weeks later, we flew there and shot it. So, excuse me. So it was a journey.
Isn't it funny how you just start using your memory of wait, I've done this before. I've done this, or I've seen this scene somewhere else, and maybe I can draw from it. Or where did they shoot that?
I've been there. I see it in my head. I've been to that place, or I've been on that location, and you read something, you're like, oh, I know what we need. I know. I've been there. I shot there 5 times.
Yeah.
It's the perfect piece. Like the Altadena Country Club that we shot at.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I know where we're going. We're going to I read the script. I was like, we're going to the Altadena Country Club. That's the place you shoot country clubs in LA. So
I think if someone really watched Parks and Rec and Veep and now Brotherhood Falls, you'd see the same, and Good Place, where there was a lot. You would. I think it's a tribute to these locations that you can go back to and make them look like different things. I'm always okay, now it's an old age home. Now it's a teenage party. Now it's
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
How is directing American Rust? Because that's one of the last things that you've done recently, right?
Yeah, it's one of the more recent things I've directed. Great. It was the kind of putting the team back together from Looming Tower. It was the 2 showrunner writers.
That's nice. I mean, it's got to feel comfortable as a director because you're confident in them and they're confident in you.
There's a shorthand there that makes things a lot easier. And even with the actors, Jeff Daniels again and Bill Camp again, and who are phenomenal, 2 of the best I've ever worked with. And so the whole group, and John Dahl ended up being the producer director on that show, who directed 2 episodes of Looming Tower. We became friendly there, so we kind of reversed roles where I was the producer director there, he was the producer director there, and on American Rust. And
it's really shot beautifully. It's really beautifully shot.
John Grillo is the director of photography who I worked on Preacher with.
Oh.
And he's super talented. Just again, Lester Cohen was the production designer. It was a lot of people I knew and had worked with before, and totally different story than anything I've done, but really rewarding. And I'd never shot in Pittsburgh before, and
nice.
Really enjoyed that experience. And I mean, that's one of the great things about what we do. Is we
I know.
Travel, go to cool places, and
I know.
And, Pittsburgh was great. So.
I've been to Albuquerque. Is there any like great movie that you wish you directed, or great show, like a vintage show?
I remember when Sex and the City was on the first go around, I really wanted to direct that show.
Really?
Obviously everybody did. It was a huge hit, but I just felt like I could see that show, and I could see me directing that show. And
that is an awesome answer, Craig.
Yeah. I think it's because it was the time of my career,
people have said like Citizen Kane,
right,
The Godfather.
I wasn't going to go with a movie. There are a million movies I wish I had directed.
Yeah.
I was a television director for the most part,
but that's amazing
because it was attainable.
Right.
It was like I was just at that point in my career.
You could have done it.
Shows.
Yeah.
And, yes. Would I have loved to direct The Sopranos? Yes. Would I have loved to direct a million movies?
You could have said Sopranos. Well, I don't think
aspirational versus like there's actually it could have happened.
Yeah, but I think you could have directed Sopranos.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's not out of the realm. You could have directed Sex and the City. You did definitely.
I could have directed all these shows.
Yes.
But Sex and the City, I wasn't quite there yet in terms of my
late 90s. I think you could have done it.
Yeah. Oh, I could have done it.
Yeah.
I have enough confidence to think I could have done it at least. But I wasn't at that point in my career to begin.
Did you see the first 2 of And Just Like That?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was not what I was expecting.
No.
I think more than anything.
I cried. I wasn't expecting that.
No, I was expecting kind of more of the old show, but I'm glad that they made a choice to just not replicate what they'd done for so
totally with you. I think we've all, I don't know, or older.
No, and I felt like that.
And that's
those actors, and I felt like they had lived a life over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I had not seen movies, but
the movies aren't good. Don't watch the movies.
I felt like they had moved their lives the way we all have, so it was cool.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised and so glad that it's not the same, and has evolved. I'm with you. I think that was really good. Well, I don't know. We did like 2 hours. Thank you.
Cut it down to.
I don't cut anything.
Oh,
I don't have an editor. No, I edit. No, I do. I do edit.
You gotta cut it down like a Veep episode. This should be like 20
Oh my God,
minutes.
I could never. I always feel bad, because I always think more or less people who want to get into this industry are maybe hopefully listening to this.
Yeah.
And to cut something that might reach to someone or just ting someone, I don't, and because I just feel like it's all valuable. Like it's all of our experiences are valuable for anyone who is interested in this, who wants to do this, good or bad. It's valuable. So,
as you can see, I probably could have talked to him for another hour, and I didn't even get to talk about Veep or Parks and Rec, but I just appreciate the time that he gave me. So informative about directing, and I hope any aspiring directors out there really listen to what he said and how he got started. Is still amazing to me. I just love that story. I do want to say I appreciate you for listening and giving me your time this past year, and I hope you have a safe and healthy new year. And I know you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Float into the new year in style with a Stogie Floaty luxury pool float. Available now on Etsy and stogiefloaty.com.
Welcome to Pro Tips for the Pros, brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads. In this series, we'll explore essential advice for professional contractors to deliver outstanding renovation results. Let's dive in. Keep the work area clean and organized throughout the renovation process to create a positive impression and minimize stress for the customer. Regularly clean up debris and dust to maintain a safe and comfortable living environment. Thank you for joining us for this pro tip on planning thorough renovations. Stay tuned for more expert advice brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads.
A lot of people tolerate ordinary. Ordinary bathrooms, kitchens, entryways. Well, not on your watch. If you're a pro, you've got a new partner in town. Floor & Decor. From tile to wood to stone, Floor & Decor has more styles and job lot quantities of Schluter, Mapei, Laticrete, and other brands pros trust. Come see a whole new way to wow with Floor & Decor. Coming soon to Bailey's Crossroads.